downloaded the Buckeye Leafcast with your host, Andrew T. Evans, with special guest, Chris Stefanik.
Let's do it, ladies and gentlemen. You know what time it is. That's right. You've downloaded the Buckeye Leafcast with your hosts. I am Andy Evans, and you know who. If you don't know by now, you need a friggin' clue, because he is the man, the myth, and certainly an ongoing current legend, if you will, in Ohio State football talk. And you know who I'm talking about. That is, of course, the intergalactic Buckeye fan himself, Mr. Chris Stefanik.
Woo, I'm feeling good now. Got me energized.
Are you ready to rock and roll and rip this shit up one time or what, my man?
Let's do it. Let's do it.
Because we are going to celebrate, as far as I am concerned, Mr. Stefanik, a huge Ohio State win this past weekend. That's right, 10th ranked Ohio State Buckeyes take down the 18th ranked Michigan State Spartans in East Lansing, Chris. Final score, Ohio State 26, Michigan State 6. And let me tell you what, Chris, I am just going to say I love it when I am wrong and you are right, especially when yours truly predicts an Ohio State loss and it doesn't happen. Not only does it not happen, Chris, I mean, Ohio State, I'm sorry, dude. I thought this was an impressive win. I was ecstatic to see Ohio State come out and play the way that they did, especially doing it against Sparty on their own field. I don't know how you feel, but let's just get into it, sir. Let's break it down. I want to hear your thoughts on this really huge Ohio State win that keeps them alive in the East Division of the Big Ten Conference.
So, take a guess for me, Andy. Michigan State. In the since 2013, so I guess the last 5 years.
Okay.
And we're going to rank teams that have the most wins over top 10 teams, right? Ohio State's top 10 team going into this, right?
Yeah. 10th ranked.
Michigan State ranks among all the schools in the world.
In the world?
In victories over top 10 teams in the last 5 years.
Even more than Jakarta State over in India, or maybe Hamburg University in Germany, or Oxford over in England there? All of them?
All of them. Where do you think Michigan State ranks?
Number one.
Well, that was a pretty good guess, but no, they're not quite that good. So Alabama's number one at 15.
Oh, okay.
Ohio State's number 2 at 11.
Oh.
But Michigan State is actually third with 9 wins.
Wow.
Over top 10 teams since 2013.
Wow.
So yeah, I mean, and you're going to their house. It's November. Historically, this is like one of the few coaches, D'Antonio, that has multiple wins versus Meyer. There's not many.
Yeah.
And you know it's cold as
which is
word. It's
very cold. Very cold up there. Yeah.
Yep. And you know what's interesting about the cold too? Well, I'm sitting there giving stats about how good Sparty is versus top 10 teams. Did you know Meyer is undefeated when the temperature is below 40 degrees at kickoff at Ohio State?
I didn't know that, but who the hell comes up with these stats?
I don't know, but I was like, it's something like 12-0 or something when it's below 40 when the game starts. So it's like, Alabama, you come up here in November and play us. Bring that shit.
Let me
Southern
tell you,
boys, keep your ass up here.
That lends, you know what? That's a whole conversation as far as I'm concerned. You had sent me a number of texts and Facebook message texts and whatnot, you know, breaking down stats. And I love it when you do that. And I don't always get back to you. And I don't think that I'm not reading what you have to say, because the stuff you throw out there, man, is just magical. And I love to try and get to as much as possible. But you were throwing out some crazy stats leading up to not only Saturday's game against Michigan State, but also even afterwards. Yesterday, you were texting me some stuff, and I was just like, my mind is blown, and I'm like, man, this is all great stuff to talk about for the podcast here today. But my God, sometimes it's like we get so wrapped up in certain stats. It's like, who the hell is out there seriously looking into some of these stats? Urban Meyer is undefeated when the temperature is under 40 degrees.
Yeah, that's tracked somewhere.
And you were sitting here. Seriously. But, and you had mentioned in some text to me last night that there needs to be an 8-team playoff. I want to get to that here in a couple of minutes. However, let's talk about this game, Chris.
Oh, yeah.
My goodness. I mean, seriously, I am proud to see what the Buckeyes did against the Spartans, especially because I predicted Ohio State to lose this football game. It was my first predicted loss of the year. And like I said, I love it when I'm wrong. I love it when you're right. You predicted the Buckeyes to go up there and beat Sparty. My confidence was waning. Yours was in place. You were right. I was wrong. So what did you see out of the Buckeyes, though, that you felt confident about going into this game, and those things that you felt confident about, did they play out on the field against Sparty on this past Saturday?
Well, I've got to admit that my confidence going into this game was more in that Sparty was too inept than it was Ohio State being good.
Agreed.
That offense is really bad. I mean, there's probably a lot of like football subdivision offenses that are better than Michigan State's offense right now. I mean, they are bad. No, to their defense.
Seriously.
They're ravaged by injuries. Do you know they've started 15 different offensive linemen this year?
15, Andy. I didn't know it was that many, but I knew that they had to, substitute a few guys in here and there because of injuries. But 15?
Yeah, they've only had the same starting five out there for 2 games all season. We've complained about injuries on the offensive line because we haven't had, Brady Taylor and Brandon Bowen all year. But my God, it's like been the same 5 guys all year.
Those guys were injured in camp. We really haven't suffered injuries like that.
On the defense, we've suffered a lot of injuries this year.
On the defense, very true, but not the offensive line. Holy cow!
Yeah. No. In fact, I'm knocking on wood as I'm saying this, but the offensive line for pretty much the entire Urban Meyer era has been almost like freakily free of injuries, considering it's 5 positions, right? I mean, you think like you'd lose a guy here and there, but they have been really, really healthy. So. But no, not so much for them. Their quarterback, Lewerski, he's got a banged up shoulder, played anyway. LJ Smith, the guy who, Ohio boy, who I was really high on, I wanted to come play for the Buckeyes, has been out most of the year. Offensive line, their top receiver was out.
Felton Davis.
You're right. He's a game breaker, and he was out. So it's like, they were down to just like their third string in some instances. So, but I came in and I'm like, you know what? I think Ohio State's probably going to get clear 20 points in this game, probably even 30. And I was wrong on that, but I'm like, I don't think Michigan State, even as bad as Ohio State has been at times for our standards anyway. I mean, they're like middle of the pack as far as like overall, but for Ohio State standards, that's pretty bad, right? So they're like 60th or something, in the country, but we're used to them being top 20.
You're talking about Ohio State's defense.
Ohio State's defense, right? So I'm like, with how bad as Ohio State's defense is, I'm just like, man, I just don't know that this Michigan State offense is going to be able to put up 20, 30 points. And man, I was like giving them more credit than they deserve because that was a really bad. Maybe I'm like, some of the credit goes to Ohio State too. Ohio State came out and played the best defensive game they've had the whole year.
But was it really that difficult to do against a ravaged offense?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's an interesting point. So they're ravaged. And then the other thing, too, is they've been playing spread teams all year, which, there's a lot of like side-to-side movement where Michigan State's just straight at you. They run that pro style. And I think it really helped the linebackers. The linebackers has not been very good side-to-side, but like running just straight forward. I mean, that's like playing right into Tough Borland's wheel. He was designed for that kind of play. He was designed to to play for Jim Tressel just at the turn of the century, but the game of football's kind of changed since then. and his style isn't really so great these days, but they just kind of played into our hands with that style, and then with being depleted. But also, they also got rid of Isaiah Pryor and Jashawn Wynn, and now we've got a competent safety back there. I mean, actually,
Brendan White, baby. Ooh,
Brendan White
great
and Jordan.
game from Brendan White.
They went from our safeties went from being awful to I'm almost tempted. I mean, it's only 2 games, and one of those was versus a really bad team, but I'm almost tempted to say it's a strength now. I mean, they look good back there. I mean, we'll see what they do against a spread team that lighten it up. That I don't know. We haven't got to watch Brendan White do a whole lot of coverage, but he's been really good in run support, and what we've seen of him in coverage has been pretty good there too. So. And Sean Wade has now been a regular out there. Early in the season. Yeah, and he played really well. They moved him back to that nickel role, where I really like him there. I think he might be the best cover guy we have on the team, to be honest with you. And I mean, Sheffield might have something to say about that, but
I'd put Wade over Sheffield.
Yeah, I'd
put Wade over Sheffield.
I think definitely before it's all said and done, Wade's going to be there, and he might already be there. You're right. He may already be there. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, definitely things to like. I mean, when was the last time you felt really good coming out of an Ohio State game? Obviously not Purdue, but even the victories. There's been a lot of oh my God, we won, but we look like crap doing it, or what the hell's wrong with this team? This was one you came out of it feeling good.
Absolutely. I mean, if anybody out there wants to say that this win, it wasn't that great and they didn't look that good and because I have heard a couple of people on local sports talk radio, as well as, just people on Facebook and Twitter. Not a lot, but there were some naysayers out there. And I'm sitting here thinking, what are you talking about? Okay, this was a 20-point win on the road in Spartan Stadium in the cold, under 40 degrees, against a Michigan State defense that, number one, was the best rush defense in the entire country. And, Ohio State, not gaudy offensive stats as far as on the ground were concerned, but you've got to be happy about putting up 120 yards on the ground, and Mike Weber comes back home, if you will, to his home state, runs it 22 times, 104 yards, and plunks a score on the board. And I thought this was about as good of an offensive effort as you could have asked Ohio State to do, considering some of the issues that they've had offensively. At one game, they're not throwing enough. The next game, they're throwing too much. They can't run the ball. We don't have a guy who at quarterback who can run the option. It's just damned if we do, damned if you don't. We've talked about this several times, Chris. But, I mean, this was just a game where, I'm sorry, you beat a ranked team in their own stadium by almost 3 touchdowns. And there's still some people out there who are not happy about it. And you have to be happy about this win.
Right. Yeah. I mean, there's 2 ways to think of it. One, you could be here and say, well, it was only 9-6 going into the fourth quarter. But again, they were only favored by 3. I mean, 9-6, winning by 3 was about what people were expecting. So even if it was 9-6 going into the fourth quarter, that's pretty much what you expected. They ended up completely exceeding expectations. So I don't get it. I was texting you about how does this team drop in the rankings when they beat the number 18 in the country, 18 team in the country that they were expected to beat by 3, but instead they beat them by 20. And then Washington State moves ahead of them when they beat a 5-win team. I'm like,
I don't get it. Now, granted, we're talking about the AP, where the Buckeyes, dropped from 8 to 9, dropped 1 spot despite beating a ranked team on the road by almost 3 touchdowns, covered the spread. Like you just said, Ohio State was picked to win the game by 3, which I think was even crazy in the first place because, of course, I said that Ohio State would lose this football game. But not only do they win by 3, I mean, they win by, 6 times that amount. And yet here's Washington State beating a Colorado team, a convincing win, 31-7, and it was on the road. But do you seriously think that Washington State could beat Ohio State? I mean, seriously, I realize they have an extremely prolific passing offense. In fact, they've got the best passing offense in the country. Yes, better than Ohio State, who ranks 3rd. Washington State is number 1 in the country in passing offense. But still, I mean, does Washington State and West Virginia deserve to be ranked ahead of Ohio State, considering the competition that they have to face?
Well, the one argument you can say with West Virginia moving ahead of Ohio State is they just beat TCU this week by 37 points, where Ohio State squeaked by TCU. So I'm not squeaked by, but beat them by 12.
Okay,
they beat them by like 3 times as many points as Ohio State did. So, but that's who's the better team now? I don't know. I to be honest, it's hard for me to get too riled up about this because I don't really watch a lot of the other games. I watch highlights, so you take it for what it's worth. But yeah, it does just seem awfully suspicious. Like it's almost like, they're trying to lay the stage for leaving Ohio State out of the playoffs if Ohio State happens to win out, which is certainly not a for sure thing, right? But they want to have their excuses lined up that why they're leaving them out, because I just think they don't like the way they look. It's like their eye test. Like that's the only way I can see that you could look at this Michigan State game and not be happy about it is that you look at it and you're like, the eye test, at least in the first half, was pretty ugly, and even the second half where they came out and really exerted their will in that fourth quarter, it still was like a field position game, right? I mean, they won it largely based on special teams, and their average field position for Ohio State in the second half was the 49-yard line, where Michigan State's was the 9-yard line. So I mean, just think about that, in a tight game.
Exactly. So, all right, Chris, let's dive into this Michigan State win here just a little bit before we move on to other things. But once again, Ohio State 120 yards on the ground. That was the 3rd most amount of rushing yards that Michigan State has allowed all season long. And once again, Mike Weber over 100, has a touchdown. How important, especially for Ohio State and a lot of the issues that they've come up against with running the football this year, how important was it for Ohio State to, even though, 120 yards and 1 rushing touchdown all game, that's terrible, quote unquote, as far as Ohio State standards go. But against a Michigan State team who was the top-ranked rushing defense in the entire country in their own stadium, how big was it for Ohio State to be able to put up the day that they did on the ground against the Spartans?
Well, I've got to admit, especially in the first half, when they were getting 0.9 yards per carry. First half, Ohio State, 0.9 yards per carry.
Wasn't looking good.
Second half, 4 yards per carry. So significant. It was like, last week I talked about running the ball is kind of like body blows, which they don't knock you out in the early rounds of a boxing match. But
yes,
they add up. They add up. And
yes,
and that's kind of, they wore down Michigan State with those that they just kept, they never went away from the run. But I got to admit, early in that game, I was like, you're going against the number 1 rush defense in the country. You're getting 0.9 yards per carry. But meanwhile, they're pretty vulnerable versus the pass. Instead of being number 1, I want to say they were like 90-something versus the pass. I mean, it was actually pretty bad against the pass.
Yeah, I know. I don't know a national statistic, but I can tell you that Michigan State was like 11th in the Big Ten against the pass. They were actually not a very good pass defense whatsoever.
Yeah, meanwhile, Ohio State's still like top 5 pass offense in the country, maybe even higher than that. I'm like, why keep trying to run it? I'm like, open it up. This is, if there was any game to throw it, this is the one when you're going against a team that you can't run on. And their weakness is the pass. It seemed to me like I was actually like, okay, you're playing into Michigan State's hands by running the ball. What the heck are you doing? But they stuck to it, and it ended up being like a big key. So I don't know. Maybe I think in the end it ended up being really big. But would they have had similar results? Could they have still won by 20 if they just came out and aired it out? Who knows?
Well, and you know what? That was just like last year. Like I pointed out in our pregame preview last week, I said, hey, look at what happened last year after Ohio State lost to Iowa. And they went up against the best rush defense in the entire country and ran for like 335 yards and went ballistic. And Weber and Dobbins both totaled over 100 yards in that game. Now, this was a little bit different scenario because we had said in that game last year against Michigan State that Ohio State this year, not quite the caliber of offensive linemen on this year's squad that they had last year, but still to go up there and I think Urban, this once again, it goes back to his psychological prowess. The dude is just basically like, you know what? F you. You think you're the best at this? I'm going to go ahead and prove you wrong. And I'm going to come out and I am going to punch you in the mouth. And I am going to try and run the ball against you. And I don't care if you think you're the best. Like you said, Chris, body blow after body blow after body blow. I've got confidence in my guys. I know my guys are better than yours. I just have to get them at a level that they believe. And I think once again, he had them believing. Now, interestingly enough, which I'm sure you've already watched the press conference from today, Urban said, he was asked, is all this, kind of switching around a little bit, or are your concerns at center and left guard with Jordan switching and Malcolm Pridgeon in there and this and that and blah, blah, blah. Where are your concerns at? And he basically said, yeah, they're not to where I would like them to be, but they're coming along. Do you kind of see that? Because we saw it last year after the loss to Iowa, the offensive line kind of came into their own, and all of a sudden they were a completely different looking offensive line. Do you have faith that this year's offensive line can do the same thing with at least 2 games left in the regular season? Who knows? Hopefully an appearance in the Big Ten championship game as well as a bowl game, if not the CFP. Do you think that this offensive line can kind of turn it around and do something like they did last year? Heavy loaded question, isn't it?
Yeah. This honestly looks like probably the worst offensive line Ohio State's had under Urban Meyer.
Ooh.
And they're getting better, and they're pretty good pass blocking, but for a rush blocking, I think it's probably the worst one. They have some good components. They just don't kind of work all together. Malcolm Pridgeon's probably the weak spot. And I think if it kind of drives me crazy seeing Michael Jordan at center, because Michael Jordan is such a good run blocking guard.
Yeah.
And he's like half the player he was at guard when they moved him to center.
Yep.
But at this point, do you move your center? I mean, the center, like after the quarterback, that's like the center is like probably the most important position on the offense.
Absolutely.
They call out the blocking. Of course, they're touching the ball every single play. To bring in somebody who's not as good at center this late in the game, this late in the season, I mean, it could work out. I mean, I'm remembering when like Pat Elflein came in as a freshman. When what was that kid from Glenville? He was at Michigan and he gave the double bird when he got kicked out. Who was that?
Marcus Hall.
Marcus Hall, one of the greatest moments in the history of the game. But Pat Elflein came in and was like instantly like better than Marcus Hall. He didn't, had never played a down. I mean, other than like mop up until in the middle of the game, so it's possible, but I think at this point you just got to ride with what you've got, And to answer your question, I think it's kind of too late. I think if we were going to really turn around and be what we want them to be, they would be further along than they are now. That doesn't say that they still can't get better. They are getting better. They showed a lot of toughness and grit. The whole team showed a lot of toughness and grit winning that game versus Michigan State. More than I thought they had. So maybe they still have more that I don't think they have. And we'll see. So, one of the interesting things will be is that game versus Michigan, because as good as Michigan State is on defense, I think Michigan's even better. I think Michigan's maybe one or two tiers better than Michigan State, and as much as I was happy after that Michigan State game, let's not forget that Michigan State shot themselves in the foot a lot in this game.
A number of times offensively. Oh,
yeah. I wrote it down somewhere, like some of these gaffes. Let's see. So they had fumbled handoffs, not one, multiple fumbled handoffs, multiple bad snaps, including snapping it into the motion man, which ended up leading to a touchdown.
Yep.
But they had more penalties than Ohio State, which there's not many teams that could say that this year. They had a TD on a wide receiver pass after a lateral called back because of one of those penalties.
Yep.
Thanking the Lords on that, because that guy was just wide open.
Wide open.
Multiple drops. We've complained about drops. I was not feeling so bad about our drops after all the ones that Michigan State have.
So many throws just in the turf. Lombardi and Lewerke. I really thought that Ohio State's defense, because they've kind of had a propensity for doing this year, would make a very mildly average quarterback look like a superstar. And thank God neither of those two were able to answer the bell, if you will,
Right. Yeah, and I've got even more down here. They had that badge pitch that led to a Jonathan Cooper fumble recovery. They got an interception. When Draymond hits the arm of the quarterback as he's about to throw. Not to mention, one of the most bizarre. I've seen it before, but it's still questionable calls. Snapping the punt out of bounds in a game where points just giving up 2 points in a game where points are that hard to come. At the time it was 7-6, Andy. Third quarter 7-6.
Yeah.
And you're going to give up 2 points for a couple yards of field position, which ended up not being hardly any, because they kicked the ensuing kickoff out of bounds, which meant Ohio State got the ball at the 50. You figure if you just punt the ball from the back of the end zone, it's probably going to get out to the 30 or 40. So you gave up 2 points to gain 10 yards. Granted, he didn't know he was going to kick it out of bounds, but still.
And Ohio State ended up coming down the very next series and scored a touchdown.
Well, no, what happened is they actually stopped. Ohio State got the ball at the 50. Michigan State's defense actually stopped them, but Chrisman punted it I think he punted it to the 1 yard line. So it's they snapped the ball and they're trying to they're trying to play the field position game, right? So we're going to give up 2 points to improve our field position.
Well, what I'm saying is
the next time they get the ball, they got it at the 2 yard line. So it completely backfired.
No, but the very next drive, when Michigan State snapped the ball out of the end zone to make it 9-6, you got to think that Mark D'Antonio's like, okay, our defense could come out, we can create a stop, we'll be okay. The very next drive, Ohio State went down and scored a touchdown to make it 16-6.
You're wrong about that, but that's all right.
No, I'm not. No, I'm telling you right now, because I'm looking at the drive chart.
Drive chart's wrong, man.
Well,
so I'm telling you that is not how it happened, but
that's according to the drive chart.
Yeah, that's not how it happened, but that's okay. But speaking of Chrisman,
no wait, time out. You're right.
Yeah.
God damn it, you're right. I am not I totally missed it. Yep, you're right. Drue Chrisman punted it down to the 2 yard line, and then 2 plays later. Actually, it was the very next play.
That's the
very next play.
That's when. That's when he snaps the ball.
Yep.
Into the motion man, and I believe it was Draymond. Yeah, Draymond fell on it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Damn it, you're right. See, why do I even doubt the intergalactic Buckeye fan and his knowledge?
I don't know, man.
You're right. I'm wrong once again.
So let's talk about this Chrisman kid, since we're talking about
Oh my goodness. That was the next topic of discussion.
Yeah, consecutive
Wow.
5
Wow.
consecutive punts down at the 5, 6, 3, 1, and 2 yard line. 5, 6, 3, 1, and 2. I'm like 5 inside of the 6 yard line. 6 total inside of the 10 on the game. I mean, that's crazy. Like I said, their starting field position was the 9 yard line in the second half. And this was, after Chrisman started the game with a 4 yard punt, what were the odds that he was going to end up being like the player of the game? I don't mean the special teams player of the game. I mean the player of the game. That was just an unbelievable turn of events. Talk about making up for an early mistake. Wow. And then, it's not like he doesn't have a good wingman either. Oh my God. Like Terry McLaurin, that play he did running down there and batting the ball out of the end zone. And oh my God, that's just so fun to watch those guys work. I mean, Urban just gushes over his gunners, and I'm kind of getting it now. I'm coming around to that. I'm like, all right, I kind of see it now. This is the punt. It's like going back to Jim Tressel. The punt is the most important play in football.
Did you touch on the fact that Drue Chrisman did not get special teams player of the week in the Big Ten after his performance against Michigan State?
I was kind of shocked by that, but I did not even look to see. I heard that he didn't get it, but I didn't look to see who did get it.
Logan Justice, kicker for Indiana, who kicked a game-winning field goal against Maryland, the team Ohio State is about to take on this upcoming Saturday. Logan Justice got the Big Ten Player of the Week, had a good week, but because of one 5-yard punt, was it 5 yards or 4 yards?
4 yard punt.
4 yard punt. You got to think that hurt Drue Chrisman's, Drue Chrisman getting the special teams player of the week in the Big Ten. And you know what? All right, let's not get too nuts. Ray Guy. Let's not get too nuts. Drue Chrisman is going to be one of the Ray Guy finalists.
Right.
For best punter of the year. But still, I could not believe that. I mean, it's like, come on.
He had 2 field goals in the game. He went 2 for 2 for field goals.
Yeah.
4 for 4 on extra points for a total of 10 points.
Hey,
his long was 42, so it's not like he hit like a 62-yarder or something.
Yeah, but I mean,
that's pretty weak compared to like 6 punts inside the 10.
Yeah, I mean, 6 punts.
Yeah, including
6 punts.
I mean, he pretty much directly gave them 9 points because he pinned them down there, forcing them to punt it out of bounds for safety. And then he pinned them down there again, which led to the fumble in the end zone for a touchdown. How many punters get you 9 points?
I mean,
basically directly.
Urban has always said he does not. I think he says it tongue in cheek, where it's like, I don't want the game to come down to the kicker, the punter. He wants to be able to score the scat of points to be able to have his team win the ball game. He does not want it to come down to special teams. Yet he is the special teams coach, which is kind of ironic. Once again, I think it all alludes towards just his psychological mindset, and Urban just says this crap, knowing that, hey, I have full confidence in the guys that I recruit in as kickers and punters. And Drue Chrisman, let me tell you what, Chris, as I know you have, I've seen a lot of good punters come through the halls of Ohio State. Andy Groom, B.J. Sander. We could go back to Tom Tupa. We could go even to Brent Bartholomew there.
Even just recently, Cam Johnson.
Even just recently, Cam Johnston, who's punting for the friggin' Philadelphia Eagles right now. Yeah. I mean, there have been a slew of good punters. And let me tell you what, Drue Chrisman, he very well may be the best damn punter I've seen in Ohio State history, because the way that he can direct the football, pin it down inside, not just the 20, like you said, the 10-yard line, and just puts it in a spot, and then gunners like Terry McLaurin, holy crap, dude. He had two plays that I can think of off the top of my head where he kept the ball in play and was able to pin Michigan State down there, inside the 5-yard line. Unbelievable, man. Chrisman and these Gunners, boy, what a performance from the special teams on Saturday.
Yeah, and Urban was just gushing over them. And,
gushing.
Urban, I don't know if you noticed this, but was it just me, or is that like the happiest we've seen Urban all year long? I mean, the body language coming from him on the sidelines, he looked fired up. He was smiling and laughing. He looked like the Urban of old. And now I've got to wonder, this team has lacked passion. This team has seemed to have lacked toughness, lacked leadership. Urban, went through that ordeal to start the year and was just not the same. He looked almost like a broken man out there. You got
by the Minnesota game, he's smacking his head. He's having all these headaches.
Right.
He's looking like some decrepit, old man. No offense, Urban. I know you're our one listener. Don't quit listening to us after I just said that. But
yeah, and meanwhile, the team is, not looking so hot and all this stuff. And then he comes out and it looks like the old Urban's back. And I'm like, what happens, Andy, if this ordeal at the beginning of the year, really what had really kind of, for lack of a better term, had broken him, had wore him down.
Yeah.
And he's just now over it.
Yeah.
We have the old Urban back, the guy who goes to tear your heart out and stomp on your throat. What happens if we've got the old Urban back and the team follows his lead?
Look out. Look out, dude.
I mean, that's kind of because, we haven't had our, Hall of Fame coach this year. We've had some shell of that guy. So I don't know, man.
Well,
I think there's hope. I still think Michigan is the better team right now than Ohio State. And I still, at this point, if I had to, gun to my head, who's winning the game, I would say Michigan's going to win it. But coming into this game, I thought not only was Michigan going to beat Ohio State, but they were going to embarrass them.
And that'll conclude the Michigan State recap of the Buckeye Leafcast. Be sure to join Chris and I for part 2, where we talk a little Zach Smith versus Tom Herman Twitter war, as well as the Buckeyes' upcoming matchup versus the Terrapins this Saturday, and their upcoming showdown versus you-know-who in the Horseshoe next Saturday, November 24th.